All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Camille Miller, and I am the founder and executive director of the Natural Life Business Partnership. And you are on NLBP today with our member spotlight with author Lyn Hicks. She is the author of the Lotus Project, The Art of Being a Woman. And I have her book. Can we see it right there? Right there. Hi, Lyn. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
I'm so excited too. So I read your book quickly, but it's such an easy read, which we were talking about earlier before we turned on the mic. It was all about the art of being a woman and really the essence of femininity, right? So I have so many questions. First, the inspiration behind the book, which I don't know if you talked about a lot, but where you came up with the word Lotus Project, but then the art of femininity itself and why you felt the need to write such an awesome book about each piece. And I felt like each chapter was like a whole different piece of your life, but we'll get to that.
Well, I was inspired because I was an organic flower farmer for 14 years and lived on a big farm. And some kids that, I call them kids, if they were maybe 10 years younger than me, asked to have a vibrant living festival. So at that time, spirit and work weren't so integrated, but I was a flower farmer. So to have like a spiritual, vibrant living festival wasn't too far of a reach. This was like 9 or 10 years ago. And so I said, sure. And it was this most incredible festival. I had it for 3 years. And after the first one, they said, can we have our Himalayan masters come do retreats at your farm? So I asked my husband and I was like, sure. And I was kind of a little like, masters, really? Because we don't really have that experience here or call people that in many ways. So I did. And I had 6 or 7 different masters come through for 5 to 7 day retreats, and people from all over the world ascended on my farm. And they just like lived there for that period. And the master stayed in my daughter's room. She had just left for college. And they taught me all this incredible stuff. Now, I've always been into health and wellness, and but they just really helped me understand my vehicle and what I loved most, or my physical body. I call it the body data. Some people call it the basic animal self, just the vehicle that we're in as a human being. And the women teachers really like inspired me the most because it was all this stuff I'd never heard about being a woman, and they called it sacred femininity. And I was like, oh, I'm sacred. And so from doing that, and I just, when that mission of 6 or 7 months was gone, I had always written millions of journals and things. I just wrote this book. It just kind of came out. It was done quickly. I had it edited. I found a girl to publish it. And then it was really fun because then I sent it to my teacher, South American teacher, my favorite feminine teacher. And she sent me back this note like, Lyn, you realized. Because, she knew 9 languages. So, you know what I mean? That's how she said, like, you got it. Lyn, you realized. And I was just like, so proud of myself. But it transformed my life to just look at myself in a sacred feminine way. And to like, it wasn't hard. Like our life is about hard and learn this and expand this way and do that. But being a woman, I'm already one. And it gave me permission to notice my gifts, which we're all using, but we don't use them a ton and we don't value them. So I had to write the book and explain the different little things that we're all so familiar that we use that we just don't revel and savor and participate fully in and really know about ourselves, because those things are considered luxury in a production world. Yet for us to produce well, that's our world. And we actually produce in a way that's a little bit different than the production that we're currently participating in.
So tell us also a little bit about your background. So we know that you are an organic flower farmer. So before this master decided to descend on your farm, were you practicing something under them? Like, how did they find you?
No, it was these kids from this vibrant living festival.
Oh,
Now, I had taken a couple yoga classes and I've always been a spiritual seeker and I've studied many medicines,
right,
flowers, herbs, all of that.
right.
But it was the one guy who was the organizer, and this was their school. So I was
Oh,
like, oh. And so it was, I Love the Woman. There were three women, there were three men. And so I learned from all of them. And I even learned a bunch of femininity from the one man.
okay.
So it wasn't anything I was affiliated with. I didn't know. It was kind of like it dropped in, as all things do that lead to our
Mm,
purpose. And I was just so inspired with the information. And it was simple and it was easy and it was mostly about energy.
love
So
it.
energy.
So you talk, I felt like each chapter of your book was like your own journey into a new awakening itself. Like it was, everything had a story behind it. And you could literally read each chapter separate from the chapter before it or after it. It was
Yes.
like its own little story, which I
Well,
thought
what
was,
I did was like all the pieces that I learned about being a woman, I just shared my experience like prior to really giving it honor as it was unfolding. And then how after this new look, when I wrote this book, these were really cool pieces
yeah,
of me as a woman. And you know what, you're doing it, but now I was doing it with consciousness and really getting the juice of it out to
understood.
experience my body in a more pleasurable, calm state than an adrenal state. So yeah, you could pick it up anywhere and in the book and
Yeah,
just it'll tell you the different avenues that we're generally in charge of and
yeah.
play with.
You know, you talk about awakening your feminine spirit in the beginning of the book, and honoring ourselves as who we truly are. When you talk about feminine spirit, is it truly just the woman, or do you talk about a feminine spirit that can also be in a male or somewhere else?
Well, we both have masculine and feminine energy. In this book, it was for women, so it's
Okay.
generally what the deal is that, you know, you've got two poles and everyone has them, but the physical body for masculine energy and the testosterone and adrenal is more of a man's, and a woman's body is more of an oxytocin, nourishing nature. Now we have that blend in ourselves, however we choose, and what works for us. But generally, a feminine body has different hormones and organs. So it's a different process of how we ride versus how a man rides. But everyone can have the divine feminine and the nourishing nature, and men could cultivate this. Some men naturally are that, or they're more that. But as far as the physicality, that's more where I try to inspire people in the sacred feminine because we're already in this body.
Right. I'm going to read a passage that I actually loved.
Okay, perfect. I'd love to hear it.
A lot of it resonated, but I you talk about women are the flowers of humanity. But I'm going to read the paragraph before it, which is really under sexual energy. And it
Yes.
says, women have been taught to use this magnetism solely to attract men. We, we can also use it for self-development and allow it to enhance our individuality, our hearts, our voices and creations, our purpose and the great connection to all. Women have a lot of problems in our reproductive systems that reflect this misunderstanding. It is okay to be alluring, playful, meandering, and sensual. Not only when we are attracting men, but in all of life. Not in a sexual way, in a creative way, charm, flexibility, passion, collaboration. These are these are natural, healthy byproducts of sexual energy that we can use to be more inspired and alive. And I loved how you say that because I felt like I'm a big believer, and my father always taught me, he always said, be the woman you are, be a woman. Use all of your women instincts and everything you know about being a woman to be exactly who you are. And it actually taught me a lot in life because I
Yeah.
actually have a very masculine nature to me as a leader and all of these other things. But it's one thing that has always resonated to me. because it is about collaboration. It's about relationships, which you talk about in the book. It's about your nurturing
Negotiating.
self. Yeah, negotiating how you see things, how you understand people, I think, in a different way. But I love how you did it about charm and flexibility and understanding and creativity, which is, I think, is a beautiful part of it's not just women, but I think it's a beautiful part of femininity. So I just wanted to say that I loved that piece of it. And it says, in the real truth of the tale, women are the flowers of humanity, which I find an interesting statement, since you are a flower farmer. We flower and produce the seeds necessary for the great human experience to continue. Like, we are the seeds that we nurture. And I just love how you said that in such an eloquent way in your book.
Well, I think, sensuality, sexuality, like, it's all kind of fogged. And the attraction and the hormones to get, in our body to mate and all of that stuff. And our training, we really missed the greatness, because sexuality is really just creativity. All of nature is in sexual energy 100% of the time. There's nothing else going on but sexual energy. But you could call it, it can be creative, it can be healing energy, it can be divine energy. It's all one energy. And it really is your end use. What's the purpose? If I'm helping someone, I'm using sexual creative energy in my loving way. If I'm speaking, I'm using it in angel's voice. If I'm using my my eye shot, I just lost it. Chakra between your eyebrows, ajna, you are using it in your divine vision. So like this is, and that's really a lot of what the study of Tantra, and I was taught by Tantra teachers, is using this passionate, vibrant energy of life for whatever. It's not just sex, and that's where women are just so creative. They're the highest creators. Mm-hmm. So we do have a creative energy different than a man's creative energy. Because they're, sure, everybody has everything, but there's a certain disposition and a certain chemical, physical experience that does affect how we can express ourselves on this plane, So to me, I always loved it because it was like the flowers and the bees. The bees are very much kind of production energy, or what would be considered the masculine pole. Mm-hmm. And the feminine pole would be the flowers. They just stand there and they blow in the breeze and they look good and they have color and they have scent. And that's what happens, is the bees happily attract, and you need both. But it gives you the extremes that we're to blend within ourselves, and then with others, they're completely different. The bees and the flowers, they're not even the same kingdom. But without either of them, we cannot create.
Yeah.
We just can't.
Beautiful
Nothing is
analogy.
created in nature without them. There's no flora.
Yeah. Beautiful analogy. So when you talk about sacred femininity, what does that mean?
To me, it's like honoring the womanliness, or the girl, or the feminine of myself. So much of our world is honoring the masculine ways of doing. They're the leaders, they're what our history was. We've just really, even back in the old days, women were scientists and writers, but they had to use a man's name.
Right.
So all of that, when I think of sacred femininity, it's like, oh, we have an equal place and an equal offering to the world. And because our education system isn't necessarily always presenting that, it's hard to be a woman. Like, women these days have to be like full-time job people and full-time house people. Like there's, they're trying to do an impossible task that, really some point it will balance. And you see it in the younger generations where the guys are much more active, in a lot of the housework, the child rearing, because no one can do that. So I think the sacred femininity to me is just being like, oh, I'm glad I'm a girl and I have wonderful gifts to the world that somebody else in a different body doesn't, and that it's pure and beautiful and sacred and created equal and lovely in all the other kingdoms except for us. It's just not in the same value.
Yeah. And you talk a lot about building, the end of the book is about building feminine communities, which I'm starting to see like a rise in that. I know you wrote this book in 2013. And here we are in 2019, and I'm seeing more and more of this rise of the feminine community. It could be in business, it could be in networking, it could be in so many different ways. I know I participate in a girls' weekend now, where there's just very like-minded people coming together and just enjoying one another. And we take care and nurture each other just through habit, because it's who we are. We don't have to worry about the dirty dishes or taking care of others in that one particular weekend. And it's become something that I loved. And I was never one really for having a lot of girlfriends. Because I'm not a drama person. And I always associated that. And now I'm learning that there's this other world.
Yes.
That's it's just about honoring who we are and the like-mindedness and growing from each other. So can you talk a little bit about the feminine communities and things that, especially the change, if you see the change that I see?
Well, yeah, and it's been called in for quite a while. And it's, the divine feminine is really just the nourishing principle versus the production. And women are naturally that. So that's why you find it more in women, because it's kind of part of our purpose. We're the child bearers.
Yeah.
And what happened, I think, somewhere along the way, women just disconnected and got into the competition and we're fighting for jobs. There's people who are working and there's people who are stay-at-home moms. And when I was in child raising, there was a weirdness between that. And so all these different things shifted how women communed. And now that's what's missing. Women are not fulfilling themselves, which they will fill up and fuel in a nurturing environment of other women. There's just nothing else that will do it as deeply, as powerfully, as quickly. And we're also the emotional nature of the community. So, we get all the stories of the sister down the road and the kid here and the uncles that, you ask a guy like, oh, how's their mother? And they're like, I don't know. We didn't talk about it. Whereas women are the emotional creatures that hold all that space. So when we get together and we chatter about it, one's crying, one's laughing, one's this, one's that. And by the end, all of that energy, all that stuff just gets, it's spoken out. It's heard. It's, they've been comforted. We've been, giggling and patting. We all just fill up and we clear our fields. So that's one of the biggest things that people aren't aware of. So you got to watch that venting, because we ground. When a bunch of women get together, we ground whatever we do, because we have the universal energy. We do represent the nature principle. So if we're all complaining about our husbands or whatever, our lives or our kids, especially when one starts it, and then we are empaths. So I feel like, oh yeah, I remember when they did that. Then the next thing you know, we're annoyed because we're empathic, that we could go home and start being mean, and it's really not our problem.
Okay.
So we have to watch venting and those kind of sessions. Like if we do that, we do it to clear, and then we're all like, well, this worked for me, or tomorrow will be whatever it is. We put forth a becoming because we ground whatever we work with. And I think you see it everywhere because we're all dying for it. Women are needing to be nourished. Master Perun, this guy, Master Perun, once was explaining to me how to chat with women in business. And I'm thinking, how did he explain this to me? And I've been in empowerment groups and women groups and girlfriend groups, and this guy's telling me, and it was really that we do not take the time to know ourselves. When we're with women, we get that moment to know ourselves and to know that we're the same as most of the other women. They have the same issues physically, emotionally, and mentally. So when we gather, we get to know ourselves. And that's really what women are missing. And that reflect back from other women, and that understanding and that compassion, which we do for the rest of the community, we get that ourselves. And then we learn to do that for ourselves. So I
So
think,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, so in, there are some circles where women are considered, drama queens, or they hate on each other. Is that come out of anger, or from not feeling most comfortable with themselves? Like, where does that piece come from? Because I would say the majority of women want to help one another. They're nurturing at their core. I saw something, it was actually on Facebook, that it said, I don't know, I'm paraphrasing, but something about a woman that fixes another woman's crown without telling everybody. That's not exactly how it was, but,
Yeah.
but I was like, it was just a beautiful saying of,
Well, it's like when you see someone's tags out.
Yeah.
And you don't know them, but you go over and you stick their tag in for them.
Yeah.
So they look beautiful. Well, I think it's because we're separate and there's such a competitive nature. And I think some of that, a lot of it's low self-esteem and the comparison and the bullying. You got to remember that way back, they had a red tent. So when these hormones came into our bodies and this understanding of our cycles and boys and girls and intermingling and wanting to make out and whatever that is, we were much more educated. Now we're kind of just thrown to the wolves. Like, you get your period, you don't really know. No one really tells you. You have the little thing in school. Some people's moms were really nurturing, and other people's were just like, here you go.
Yeah.
So around that time, we really disconnect from ourselves and that childlike essence of femininity, and we kind of start to get lost. And then it becomes, people get bigger boobs and this comparison, and the boys like her, and some people just stay in that and never really create true friendships. And I think it's also part of our, our DNA, our growth, our experience of women in this time, the evolution of trying to be the people who stayed home and hung with the women and children and had much less cattiness. I'm sure they had it, because I think it's human nature to run into struggle and refining ourselves. But I think, now we're really coming to where we can be in the business world that's mostly run by production energy and the home, and kind of like finding our way with that. Because at first we all started acting like men, so it's very competitive. If you're in a industry and you're a woman, those men, you better get like a man to get up there. Now that women are getting in those positions, it's going to shift, because we do have greater negotiation. We do have bigger picture way we see things. We don't have the competitive edge the same way. We can play it, but it's not our essential nature. Yeah. So it's just, we're disconnected from that essential nature. I mean, look at how, the shows on TV. I mean, the bickering. I mean, I'm like, gosh, you go follow me around, because I'd have a hell of a show with absolutely no life. Enough adds drama and just situations that I don't need to be battling my support group. It's not about that. My support and the same humor comes in, me and my girlfriends always were like, they should be following us because we get along and we have that feminine thing, but the drama is in life. Yeah. It's like something gets hurt, someone dies, someone loses their job, someone has illness. Like, that's the drama, or your car crash, or you're laid off. Like, there is drama in life. There's no need for our support system, but it is a low self-esteem and kind of not knowing our power as women that really gets us in the foggy area.
Yeah. And I think each decade of a woman's life, probably anyone's life, but I can only experience it as a woman, is almost like a new awakening, like who I was in my 20s or who I was in my 30s. And I remember reaching 40 and thinking, wow, I wish I knew this in my 20s, and then when I reached 50, I was like, wow, I'm really loving this decade. I wish I had the body of the 20, but the mind, I would never give up all of the experiences I had. And you become so much more mature and giving back. And it's kind of, I guess, becoming your elder.
And that's part of the love of the feminine community, is because there's always a chain. I've always known older women, and I've always known younger women. And there's like this chain of information that we pass back and forth, and you didn't design it. It's just how it is. Part of that community, you know, the people ahead, and women are very nurturing and giving of information and care and how to do things and how to shift looking at them and how, you know, different ways, because you get that wisdom from the older women and you pass your wisdom down to the younger women.
I think
and that is really important that we harbor that, you know, and keep that as a sacred. That's so cool.
Yeah. I remember, well, life, you know, community has changed a lot, but when I was younger, I remember my mom used to have coffee with friends. Like they would just call and be like, can I come for coffee? And they would bring all the kids because, you know, we had a lot of them. And most of our friends had 5. I was one of 5, but most of the families I went to also were one of 5. But you would overhear the conversations, or you'd sit with the women. You know, I had, there was 4 girls in my family and a boy, but the girls would sit with the older women, you know, and sit with my grandparents and sit with the older. And now that I have 3 daughters, it's kind of the same. Sometimes they sit with my friends and we talk about real life stuff, and that's how they learn. But I think a lot of that is being lost.
It is,
you know, because we don't have the same family dynamics. I'm Italian. We kind of have kept it, but I'm still raising Americans. You can definitely tell the difference. Plus we have ketchup in the house. So that's the difference right there. But I think that the whole community thing is different, you know, and we used to stand and we used to cook. You know, the women used to always help the women in the kitchen, which I think was so much happened in a kitchen.
Oh my gosh.
I think it's so
it still does.
So many things happen over food, right? That I wonder if some of that is being lost. But I do have this feeling that some of it's coming back now.
Absolutely.
Like we've lost it. And now some of that family and some of that community is coming back. Like even the way we networked and all of social media, for a long time, that's all people did. And there's great support. And I think Facebook, the one great thing about Facebook is, at least for me, I learned, oh my God, there's people just like me, or they're thinking just like me. I'm not the crazy one. You know, like it's all of us. We all think this way. You know, like I thought I was an awful mother until I was on Facebook and realized, oh my God, everyone has those bad moments, or everyone, you know, so it kind of normalized everything and you find support. But I think we're also turning back to this, and I don't know if it's the timeline thing, but we're turning back to this world of that one-on-one, that in-person, that, hey, I need to feel you and talk to you and touch you. And I think phone calls are becoming more important again. Like I like to hear voices, not just text. That could be an age thing. But I also feel that I even see it sometimes with my kids, you know, since we moved to a smaller community, not on a farm. You know, they take walks with friends and they might just go get pizza or something, but it's still coming together as community, where I think we disconnected for a while and now we're coming back again.
Well, I write that in the book about the divine feminine. It's like the local movement. It's the movement. It's the same as the women's movement, because it's all about nourishing. Now we're going to like Joe's store again, where we're like, hey, how are the kids? Give me that. And, you know, or you go in somewhere like, have your stuff, your coffee or whatever, exactly like you like it, because that's what we kind of got into. Do you remember when I was in school and college, they were doing like, one day there's going to be these mega stores, you know, that we have now.
And they were,
Walmarts, and they were just an idea, and we couldn't like grasp. And we went into the mega store thing, and now you see it turning back because it was a less personal experience. It had, you got great deals, but the quality of the experience of getting your things wasn't necessarily as nourishing.
I
see it coming in all levels, you know, like, of course it's going to swing back because that's how we learn, but more than anything, we've produced too much. I mean, in the old tribes, the women's jobs were to create and then create the boundaries or the banks of the river. So how they would do that is they'd say, men, we have enough fish. Men, we have enough huts. Come, let's gather.
Right.
So they were the creators, and then they were the boundary setters of how much production. And they had that more universal, like, we don't need excess gluttony, because it just wasn't part of the nature of the characters.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of what this rise is to be like, do we really need, now everyone's simplifying. Even our furniture and our homes are becoming clean and modern and a few stuff.
Yeah.
Because of our over bombardment and our desire to just be nourished, to just sit, to just chill for a minute.
Yeah. And we're going to smaller homes, like those big McMansions and that are out in the country. A lot of people are coming back to like Main Street America. I was one of them.
Yeah.
I got rid of the big house and moved to a little old house, 1920 house in a borough, like on a 50 by 100 plot. And I've never been happier, because there's a community. You talk to your neighbors, you sit on your front porch, you take a walk, you go out after dinner. You know the person cooking pizza at the end of the street. You know the person that delivers your mail. It's a whole different experience, and I think a lot of them are moving back.
Well, it's the nourishment. That's what it means by that divine feminine. It's a nourishing. Like, we need nourishing to continue.
Yeah.
And feel good about. Like, if we're just always doing production, we're missing who's going to take care of it, and who's going to keep it going, and who's, when do we stop? When do we sit down and really just be and enjoy what the fruit of our work is?
True.
The savoring, the reveling, it's not even honored that we feel, it's like, oh, you're so full of yourself. It's like, who else do you think's in here? I mean, who else am I supposed to be full of?
Yeah.
I need to be full of myself, because that's who I am. I don't need to be full of you or anybody else. I mean, it's kind of absurd thing. Like, and it's different than arrogance to feel good about what you accomplish and to feel beautiful.
Yeah.
And to feel savor.
Agreed. Yeah.
We don't do that. We like go up, done, new goal,
Yeah.
And there's no like, like you're Italian, like drawing out the meal, like, it's course 19 of my savoring of my accomplishment,
Well, it's also community, because for every course we sat and we spoke about something. I think that had a lot to do with it.
I think you will see community. That's really the modern feminine community is really in all ways. The most power is in the authentic sisterhood, where it's not necessarily business and networking. It's just women getting together, and what happens, and that nourishes us.
And being who we are.
Like, hi, I'm Lynn. I blah, blah, blah. And you tell me what you do. That's still kind of a masked experience. It's the deeper sisterhood where we're just there. And it's like, you know what, today I feel like crap. I have, something terrible happened in it, but I came anyway. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
That's the thing that we're missing, is that being our just, I'm here, I'm barely here maybe, or somebody else is totally in fun of themselves, but just being who we are and know I'm so-and-so and this is blah, 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 that's where the modern feminine community really can build us.
Beautiful. You also spoke in your book a little bit about, your experience with Erica. And the journey to the green living. Do you want to just talk about that for a second, and what that was like? Because
it wasn't like all like, oh, let me be hip. Well, my daughter had colic, and so when I was a new mom, like after we couldn't breastfeed after a certain period of time, I kept getting sick with the mastitis or whatever it was called. So I ended up having to formula feed her, and the formula she could not digest. And so I ended up, finally, we found this formula that was more digested so she could. And it was like a whole new experience. But at that moment of child, I realized, like, I've got to pay attention to how I feed this little being. Mm-hmm. Then I couldn't use baby food because of the preservatives, and they didn't work for her system. So at that point, I really started to get into understanding nutrition from a deeper level. And at that same time, when my daughter was very little, I had a part-time cleaning business. And I had, I worked like 2 days a week, and I had a couple employees. And 1 or 2 days of doing like 2 houses, 2 of the days of the week, using the toxic cleaners, I was like, oh, because it was concentrated for like a good 4 or 5 hours. So a friend of mine had used an environmental company called Maluka, and was like, Lyn, why don't you check out these cleaners? So that kind of began my process to realize the chemicals in our house and how dangerous they are. Through my daughter, I learned that the preservatives and stuff really aren't necessarily the best option for us to use if we have a healthier choice.
Right.
And from there, once you jump on the green thing, it just sucks you in. Like, you recycle, then you're like juicing, and then you're like, and to me, I was part of the green collaboration and started it in Bucks County years ago. When it was first trying to get green, and all of us green people trying to find each other. And some people would be like, well, they're not green, they can't be in there. And we were like, no, if everybody changed light bulbs, it would make more impact than the green people getting really green.
Yeah.
It was about a learning and an evolution and a connection to our environment.
Yep.
So we the soaps and as you start to study any of that, it's so nasty that you really just want to go environmental.
Yeah.
And I remember going to put down the stuff to kill thrips in my gladiolas. So I got, poison. I was like, all right, I didn't really choose to grow environmental. Organic, I just was. Because I didn't want to get into chemicals. It just sounded too hard for me.
Right.
And I went and I had this thing, and it was like a laundry detergent thing. And it had like balls in it you could sprinkle. And I just stood there and I could not do it. Like, something inside me would not let me use that pesticide. And so from there on, I just figured, you know what? I'm either going to use natural things, or I'm just going to say, this year I have a crappy gladiola crop. Because as an organic grower, you grow so many things.
That's right.
And the variety is what the ticket is that other things take off and your season still works out,
Exactly. I always told people, so my background was organic agriculture. And I always told people, like, when you start to live that organic lifestyle, like, it's like going for a swim and you dip your toe in the pool to see the temperature. Yeah. And as you dip your toe, and then you're like, oh, it's kind of warm. It's kind of nice. I like this. You get on the first step, you get on the second step, like, you're going for the swim.
You're
going for the swim because it
takes you
good, right? And you think, and then you start to eat cleanly, and like, you think clearly, and you have more energy, and you're like, hey, what is this? And then it's like alternative health. You try acupuncture, you try herbs, you try like the next thing, then energy medicine, and you're like, whoa, this is amazing. And you just keep going. And I'm still learning. It's just, it's a learning curve. And then you get into communities of people that know more than you do. And you're like, tell me about this and tell me about that. And it's just never ending goodness. But yeah, I say the exact same thing. Like, you're going, you can't stop yourself. It just feels so good. Well, Lyn, thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything that I missed that you want to tell everybody who's watching this? So this is on our podcast, which is the audio vision, as well as the NLBP-TV that's coming up. If you missed this and you're watching it on replay, all of Lyn's contact information will be below in our notes. And the transcript of this interview will be below in our notes. So please, if you want to get in touch with her, do so. Her book, again, is called The Lotus Project, The Art of Being a Woman. It is available on Amazon. And she is also from Ottsville in Bucks County, New Jersey. If you have any further questions, please contact us or Lyn directly. It is Lyn Hicks, LynHicks, and she is the author of The Lotus Project. Thank you so much for joining us today, and hopefully we will all see you again on our member spotlights on NLBP TV. Thank you.